Committee may let us.
If we're all set, I'll call the order. The meeting of the Committee of Infrastructure, this being Monday, November 10th at 7 p.m. in the Automatic Chamber, and duly noted in 2 places, including the city's website in accordance with the requirements of RSA 91-A:2, room rule number 2. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Absolutely. Alderman Thibodeau?
Here.
Alderman Sullivan? Alderman Clee is here. Alderman Dowd?
Present.
And Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
You have 4 members in attendance.
Okay. Also in attendance, we have Alderman Elijah Melvin Moran, Jr., Alderman Derek Thibodeau, and Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director, Mr. Tim Cummings, and who else? Do you want to be recognized?
Jen DeShays, Risk Manager, Matt
Yes.
Sullivan, Director of Community Development, and Jen McCormick, Library Director.
Okay. I don't know if that got on the tape, if they could hear you.
It was Jen McCormick, Director Sullivan, and Mr. Shane from Risk Management.
Okay. Thank you for all attending. Okay, public comment.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. I was wondering if maybe at the end of the evening, when we're starting to talk about the committee's schedule and upcoming meetings, that we take a moment and talk about a motion you all adopted at the full Board of Aldermen meeting, basically recognizing a desire to create a joint infrastructure and Library of Trustees committee. So I have some thoughts on that, and I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about it. I was thinking we could do it during general discussion, if you would allow that.
So allowed.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none. Communications.
From Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services, Jennifer Duchesne, Risk Management, Communication providing additional information on 025-071 relative to open hours for the outdoor City Hall restrooms. Also from Wayne R. Husband, PE, Senior Traffic Engineer, Division of Public Works, support of pending legislation 025-070.
Okay, there being no objection, I'll accept the communication and place them on file. Unfinished business,
There is none?
new business resolutions,
There is none.
new business ordinances.
025-081, authorizing a stop sign on Shadowbrook Drive at its intersection with Spindlewick Drive. Mr. Chairman, I motion to recommend final passage.
Okay. Alderman Theobald, would you like to discuss this?
Sure, thank you. Should be a simple one. There's a new development off Shadowbrook and Spindlewick that Flatley is developing, and the residents around there believe there needs a stop sign to kind of quell the traffic that's going to be caused by that. So this one should be a fairly easy one, so hopefully this one will go through. And I thank you guys for listening to it.
Okay, and I think we also received a communication from Wayne Husband, and with no objections to this. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Further ordinances?
There are none. I think we're up to petitions.
Oh, I see, petitions, yeah, there are none.
Yep. Table and committee.
Table and committee.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to remove from the table 025-070.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yeah,
I just wanted to kind of ask for clarification. There is a presentation on the agenda this evening, back under number 3.
I'm sorry, she did not put that on our.
yeah, it's not on,
Yeah, it's
It
not,
is
but it
on-
is here. But it is here on the agenda, sir. right there.
It is on the public one, though.
It's on
not-
the public agenda, so.
Yeah, it's on the blue form, but it's not on the working document. Yeah. Okay, without objection, can we hold off on that pending legislation and then jump right into the, the presentation?
I'll
And
pull
then,
back my motion, sir.
yeah, thank you. See, we can fix anything. Not bad for missing a step, huh?
Yes, and this will be fairly quick. Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director. I was asked to do a presentation on the Clean Team idea, which is kind of like a downtown ambassador. This was out of the presentation that we did, or the joint session between downtown business owners and the Board of Aldermen. One of the solutions that came up was the Clean Team idea. We had some issues trying to figure out how that could actually work, and primarily that is something that our union does through DPW already. And so we were trying to figure out other communities outsource that, and we wouldn't necessarily be able to do that. Otherwise, we might receive lots of grievances, and it could be almost twice as expensive as just outsourcing it. But so I've talked with our DPW director, Lisa Foto, and she and I have talked through the idea. It sounds like this year we're going to try to, we've put in legislation to use some of the surplus, so supplemental appropriation, about $200,000 for the rest of the year. And we will end up using that to hire 2 additional staff people for the rest of the fiscal year. And then during the next cycle, budget cycle, we will put it back into the operating cost, but we'd like to put that in prior to July 1, so that we can get somebody out there in the springtime, especially because we'll see a lot more activity in March, April, May, and June, and we'll be able to implement it a lot earlier. So that was why we're going to end up going for supplemental. So that's the idea for right now. Down the line, we're thinking that as we put it into operating costs, we may end up trying to create some sort of pilot program where we actually work with public health to hire some of the people that are within the public health system to try to get them employment through the city. And then we can kind of see how that pilot program works. And eventually, if it's working well, that we could actually take some of the other positions around DPW and hire more people from our either homeless population or transient population to try to get them employment, permanent employment with things like benefits. So that's the long-term plan. The short-term plan for this year is to do a supplemental appropriation and hire just regular additional employees, 2 of them for the downtown. And then we're also talking about 1 for the riverfront that would be paid for out of the riverfront TIF account. That would be that entire riverfront maintenance as well, since we do have quite a lot of areas that could potentially get very dirty and that need a lot of support, love. So that's the idea. That's the update for right now. Any questions?
Alderman Clegg.
Thank you. You know how I feel like about the riverfront area. So would it be also maintenance of the growth, or is it just cleaning up?
No, it would be entirely, so landscaping. There would be portions of it that we would still have to contract out because of the slope of the bank, things like that. We don't have the right equipment to do some of that, but that would be a maintenance person that would also do cleanup and trash pickup, things like that. So they would be doing landscaping as well.
Follow-up?
But it would not be the trees and things like that? We would
Likely, we would still have to contract out for that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Dow.
Yeah, so I'd be interested more in the specific tasks, like you said, because of the banks and stuff. They're not mowing the lawns.
No, but weeding, there's a lot of weeds that grow. There's a lot of invasive species that are over there as well. So those kinds of things are going to have to be contracted out because we don't have a certified person on staff for invasive species. And then there's like a boomstick that we would need, so we would have to hire that out. But those would be for like twice a year rather than a weekly maintenance.
So are they gonna, two questions, are they gonna have a job description that says what they do and don't do? And two, are they gonna have to be part of the union, because aren't the BPW people part of a union?
Yes, yeah, so that would be a yes to both of those questions.
All right.
Yep.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, does Manchester not unionize their BPW? Like, how do they get this separate team?
They do, but their DPW they had never contracted for the downtown area. So that's how they got away with contracting out, is that was never part of DPW's job. But we do have, DPW does it, and so it would be essentially taking away things like overtime potentially from our union. So that's how they worked it a little differently than we have to.
One follow-up, please? One
Follow-up, yep.
So would this also require extra, like, new vehicle requests? Because now you have more people in the field that may need, if someone's doing maintenance down by the riverfront, you probably need some kind of truck or something down there. Is there enough vehicles on staff, or do we have to now put in for a purchase of extra vehicles?
Yeah, so that is something that we're still working out. But for this year, it would just be for the staff, and they would work with work schedules so that they could use existing material or equipment. And then we would figure out how that's working and if we can continue that or if we have to buy additional equipment. There is going to be some additional equipment, but it's like, grass trimmers and, little, $100 kind of equipment that would fit within existing budgets.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? I do have one, Liz. Would the on-duty maintenance supervisor with BPW, would he be supervising these people?
Yes, currently
Okay.
that's how we're going to structure it for at least this first 6-month period.
And that's already been negotiated with,
It has not yet, but that's how we're working around the potential grievance issue. That is likely how we're going to have to structure it. So we're working, both Director Photo and I are working with our legal team to make sure that all of that is worked out prior to actually hiring somebody. But we are asking for the appropriations, I believe, at the 24th meeting. So that's when we'll get the funding to actually start moving forward on the contracts.
okay, very good. As long as that's on your radar. I understand this is in
is.
infancy as a concept, so, yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna try to work with what we've got this year, see how that's working, and then make modifications into our operating budget.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none. Ms. Hannum, I apologize. You were on one script and not the other. And
Yes. No,
we
I-
work on the white one, and that's the one you weren't on. So
Yes.
please, the committee offers their apologies to you.
No problem,
But
thank
thank
you.
you for coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I did not ask, we have, you read 2570. Can you read it again? Because we're going to
Absolutely.
take it
Pull
off
it
the
back,
table.
I motion to remove from the table O25-070.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, oh, yes.
Yeah, just because it's my legislation. So,
Can we talk?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to talk about it? Yeah.
I'm going to explain it. So, there's,
Don't we have to take it off the table?
We have to take it off
Oh,
the table
oh, right,
first.
go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not off the table,
yeah, okay,
although
good.
taking it off the table is open for discussion, but,
I have nothing to say about that.
okay. All right, thank you. Okay, I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 25070 is off the table. Can I have a motion, Alderman Clee?
Sure. The authorizing stop signs on Macefield Road and Dryden Ave at their intersections with Peel Road. Mr. Chairman, I motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, and now I'll recognize Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on this one, we've had some speeding issues on Peel. As you can see, Peel's a long road, and people just can't seem to do the speed limit. We've done many different things to try to quell it. It's not working, so I've had people come to us saying that they wanted stop signs at every intersection, but we're gonna try to do 2. I worked with Dan and Wayne on this, and they believe that Maysfield and Dryden are the best. There's I believe a bus stop near Maysfield that this will help out at, that a lot of parents were concerned about. So I think this will help quell that a little bit and at least make it a little safer in that area. So I would say with Wayne and Dan's approval, I think this is the way to go.
Okay, any additional comments on this? This did meet the criteria from Mr. Husband of BPW, the Traffic Department, so no other further questions. I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Also before the committee is we have a request from the author of 02571 that this will remain on the table. He can't make it this evening, so I think we can extend that courtesy, correct? Okay. Next up is, yes, that's on the table, 02572.
Yeah, regarding disposition of real property, I think that's still on the table, yes. I recommend to remove from the table 025-072.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, can you read 025?
Sure. 025-072 regarding disposition of real property. Mr. Chairman, I motion to recommend final passage.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I have to apologize to you and the committee members and other aldermen because I made a mistake and I didn't notice until today. I got a message from Director Sullivan, and at first I read it in between seeing patients, and I said, E2, Director Sullivan, E2. But no, he was absolutely right. When I double-checked the legislation, this looks like public housing. The way it's written, and not something that many developers would even want to visit Nashua to even look at the RFP. And with your indulgence, I can tell you what I plan to remove at a future infrastructure meeting, but I would still like to hear the committee's comments on other parts of the legislation, which, while hearing what I plan to remove, if that's okay. I'm giving you more background on the...
Yeah.
And then you want to table it again?
And then table it for, hopefully, for us to bring back an amendment, not just of what Director Sullivan, if he could join us even better, because he has been involved with this for over a year. This is not something new. And we just got our wires crossed. It was essentially the email came from legal during the Sky Meadow shooting, and my brain read this differently than what we talked about ahead of time. But ultimately, I'm looking to change the disposition of city property to 60% AMI overall. It's currently 80% citywide, but as working with Director Sullivan and his team over the last couple of years as chair of PDC, we've determined that there may be barriers that are requiring that for private land. So that existing ordinance that requires this for the private land is going to be resolved with the rezoning process to a certain, I believe. And then this would be what happens when we sell city property. And because the new 60% AMI is what 80% was when the first inclusionary zoning was passed. And I'm just looking to basically update it. So when you look at 60% AMI on national income, we're looking at $29 an hour for a single person. And for a family of 4, that's $42 an hour. You're looking at around $78,000 a year for a family of 4. We're not talking about people that work at even CVS or entry-level jobs. We're talking about nurses, teachers, firefighters, people that work here at City Hall, being able to have some guarantee that those working class jobs will have a spot when you're developing city property that has been used for the purpose of the public, like schools and such, who provided such free services as required by the government, now turning it over to something that can be not just the betterment of the folks that can afford market rate housing, but those who traditionally wouldn't be priced out because they have professional jobs that are typically well-paying. But as we're seeing the AMI grow and change, it's getting up there higher and higher for Nashua. We have to realize when our current ordinances just don't make sense anymore when it comes to that percentage. And maybe Director Sullivan can add more. My initial thought was of that 60%, there'd be a certain portion, just like we did with Elm Street, that at least one unit might have the ability to take a voucher. And we have seen that resulted in numerous bids. But this, the way it came out, because of my error in not picking it up, it looks like we're saying, don't come here and develop, and I don't want that to be the perception. And that's why I need to apologize to everyone, because that's not what I intended to do, nor represent the board in a way that this would even be something considered by the full board. So if there's anything Director Sullivan would add, but from what I'm saying, removing that table regarding the vouchers at 50%, 1 through 10 units, et cetera, the overall aim will be 60% AMI for a portion of the property, similar to the percentage that's already in existence now at the 80% inclusionary, and slightly a bit of those, maybe a little bit less. And he did give an amendment today, which is great. This guy works so much, but I don't want anyone to feel rushed about something we threw together 5 minutes ago.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, Director Sullivan.
Thank you, Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director. We did end up with a bit of a, and pardon the use of this phrase, particularly to pardon Alderman Moran, a bit of a Frankenstein piece of legislation because we had the mixing of several concepts that were being, I think, contemplated by both the legal department, myself, and Alderman Moran. So while he's taking on fault, it's certainly not his fault in any way that we had this error in the legislation. I think it was well intended, but as Alderman Moran is saying, his intent, as I understand it, is to, in cases where the city is disposing of city property and where that city property is going to be used for multifamily housing, examples being the NIMCO site in Elm Street, despite the fact that those are expressly exempted under this ordinance. In examples like that, much like we currently have in our inclusionary zoning ordinance, there would be a requirement that a portion of those units be guaranteed as affordable to individuals or households making 60% or less of the area median income. That is clear, and that's Alderman Moran's intent. We unfortunately mixed in the concept of housing choice vouchers here, which muddies the water. It's actually a very different concept, and so unfortunately those two have been included here, but now understanding Alderman Moran's intent, I'm going to go back to work with him on trying to come up with an ordinance that at a minimum can be debated in concept. I will just note that I believe, and I don't want to speak for Alderman Moran, but there is an understanding that although this ordinance will now contemplate more affordable units than what our ordinance currently does, that the percentages in this table will likely need to be changed based on that deeper level of affordability. So rather than stifling or shutting off development by having overly onerous affordability requirements, I think Alderman Moran recognizes that if we're going to ask for more affordability, there needs to be a lower percentage requirement. And so you're going to see some changes within this table as well over the next month, assuming we can again convene this committee to modify the table to make this something that could be more workable. I think regardless of how this ordinance ends up from a vote perspective, what it certainly does, where it ends up, it certainly does start a conversation about how we might mandate or articulate the need for deeper levels of affordability in projects that the city is undertaking that result in multifamily housing. So happy to work with Alderman Moran on that in advance of your next meeting. But again, apologies on the staff side of things for mixing the concepts and the legislation that was put forward to you tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Can I just add one follow-up to that, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you may.
And there is the exemption for smaller builds and small construction companies to not hamper also small businesses who are not well-financed developers too. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a tiered system. Smaller projects are much more difficult to get affordability into. The numbers are harder to make work. So this exempts projects that are smaller in nature, under 10 units. And I expect actually as we adjust this to include 60% of area median income, we may in fact have more steps or more tiering so that we can ensure that development still happens despite the intent to have more affordability.
Alderman Clay and then Alderman Dow.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. First off, the in lieu of payment, is that still going to exist? Because when I'm reading it, it sounds like only under certain circumstances of contamination and so on, where we have the in lieu of now.
Mr. Chair, if I may comment on that.
You may.
I think it's important to be clear that this ordinance would exist independently from the land use ordinance that Sam Durfee is working on for inclusionary zoning. So that ordinance will continue to exist as a very separate product for general private site developments. This ordinance will only impact city-owned properties that are being disposed of. So Alderwoman Clee, this does not create a 60% area median income requirement for a typical private property development. It's only for city-owned properties that are going through an RFP or similar disposal process.
If I may?
Follow up?
Yes, please, thank you. So you did answer my question of the IZ going from 60 to 80. That's a whole separate thing.
That's correct.
This is just for city-owned.
That's correct.
It's not for private property development and so on. Are we looking, and I'll ask either one of you, are we looking to make this similar to like Major Drive, where we have like, it's all going to be, or is it just a certain percentage of it has to be? So Major Drive is mostly AMI, and there's that step down so that if people actually start doing very well, they're not thrown out. They can move up. Is that what this is?
No.
Intention of?
I want to be upfront and honest. This is going to be more market rate overall.
Okay.
The goal is in that major drive, just the concept I think most of the city is behind, is the any type of housing, right? But we can't control the private market. What we can control, well, to certain circumstances, we can control it when we have leverage. We can control public housing, which this is not, and we don't want it to be. And we can control a deed of property, basic, when selling city land, to ensure that the intent of that public land in some way, in my theory here, continues to be used for the neighborhood to stabilize housing. So a project like this, plus straight up market rate, no one just getting the zoning permits, really just making sure everything's conforming to private-public partnerships that may be more reminiscent of the proposal we got for Greeley Park, all those combined. But some of these things we don't have much control over, but you can control this and how you stabilize the housing in the current area that the most likely are schools and parks that have been so integral to the neighborhood to begin with. So the goal is not to make it more AMI like Major Drive. It's just to recognize that to get the best bang for your buck, you need that market rate plus that social contract that we have with the community, that the folks that already live there and are working at the hospitals and stuff, we don't have to turn this into Boston where everyone goes down to Boston to work because they can't afford to live there when they're nurses and doctors working at even Burlington. We can even say I used to work at Leahy in Burlington. You can't afford to live in Burlington if you work at the hospital. We don't want that to happen in Nashua. At least I don't.
May I just one quick follow-up?
Yes.
Please, thank you. While this would be my worst nightmare, let me give you a scenario and you can tell me if we were to take Mount Pleasant, just choked on that one, and that were to be turned into housing, which it can't be because structurally it can't handle it, but if that were to be turned into housing, this would be the type of structure that you're discussing?
I think we both have the same answer, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Alderman.
Thanks. So, no matter what happens to the land, the board still has to decide if it's going to be disposed of as what it's going to be. So before you even decide if it's going to be housing, you first have to make that concept, right?
I get that part. I'm just saying if we were to sell that to a developer and so on, this would be a requirement of it.
Oh,
That's
yes, yes, I'm so
full
sorry,
and
yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's what's gonna
Yeah.
happen. I'm
And it could
choking
be
on that
housing.
one.
It
Yeah.
could be housing. I mean, it's not,
But
there'd
the
be a
goal-
community conversation that would need to happen before that
Right,
decision
but
was made.
it's the people's board that decides if it is gonna be housing or not, or it's gonna be turned into another park.
But I'm just saying, if that had, where the conversation had gone, this is what
Yes.
would be applied to it.
Yes, that's right.
That's what I was
Yes.
asking, because that was just in my head, the empathy. Thank you, sir.
She had the floor, Alderman Dowd. I saw you recognize you. You're next, please.
So, I'm trying to understand exactly what we're doing. Does this mean that if we have this housing that we're talking about, that the only people who can buy it are restricted to have salaries under the 60%? And if not, what are we talking about? And once you have the qualification to qualify to buy it, who determines the price of the unit? Is it market-driven or is it capped?
Happy to answer that. So Alderman Dowd, you're bringing up an excellent point, and that is that the legislation, as it's currently drafted, applies to both renter-occupied units, rentals, and owner-occupied units, those that are for sale. So the answer is that the qualification process would be done most likely by the Community Development Division. We would ensure that either a tenant as a renter or a buyer for an ownership unit is under that 60% of the area median income at the time that they go to either sign a lease or execute a purchase and sale agreement. And so we look at numbers that are published by HUD and New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. We then review tenant income statements and other documentation. We ensure that they qualify, and if they do, they're in fact able to occupy the unit. So we have experience with that. We do it actively in our urban programs department right now. Despite that, this legislation is intended for multifamily development, but it's worth a conversation, I think, further with Alderman Moran subsequent to this meeting when I work with him to determine whether this should apply only to rental units or to owner-occupied units as well. So I think your question is a good one because I expect that Alderman Moran may have intended this to apply to rental units and not necessarily to owner-occupied units. So that's an excellent point for us to ponder before we bring back a new draft of legislation.
Follow up.
So if we have a unit, let's say for sale at the moment, and you have 5 qualified people that could go into that unit, is there a bid process and whoever's the high bidder gets it? And
I can address that.
that's the way
So
real estate
those-
works.
Those standards have yet to be developed. What I can tell you, because we're going through this right now with the units at Doucette Landing, is that we use a first-come, first-served qualification process whereby the seller, in this case it would be the city, as soon as a given buyer is qualified, the seller can begin negotiating with any eligible buyer, basically. So it's first come, first served. So if you, Rick Dowd, submit your application process to buy a unit, the city qualifies you, you can then begin negotiating right at that point in time, but there's no obligation to go through a lottery system or a high bid system. But we haven't developed those rules and regulations around this yet. And so quite honestly, I was contemplating this more towards as applying more towards multifamily rental units than I was towards owner-occupied units.
Yes.
And one thing I should point out, and I'm sure Director Cummings might have more information, because he looks like he wants to speak. But I think even at the Elm Street proposal, NeighborWorks was part of one of the bidders that had this exact concept in it. And that was one that's just LMG proposed 60% AMI to sell the homes that they allowed NeighborWorks to develop while they developed their market rate next door. So the concept, I guess, would be stolen from LMG, but maybe Director Cummings.
Okay, yes. Director Cummings,
Yes,
thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. So a couple points that were brought up this evening, and Alderman Dowd started to touch upon them. I think Director Sullivan was kind of thinking a couple steps ahead in terms of thinking about the end user. And what this legislation speaks to is actually the disposition from the city. And I'd like to kind of get clarification from this body as to what your expectations are relative to the disposition process. Because if we put something like this in place, then we may get proposals where you're not getting the highest bid. And that's okay if we have other community values that we're trying to achieve, but we need that type of policy direction. And one of the pieces of one of the language or wording in here in this piece of legislation is it says, and I think this is worth discussing in a little bit more detail, when the city of Nashua is selling city-owned property which could be developed into 10 or more residential units. It would be good if we knew what could be meant, what your expectations are around that, so we can have that guidance. It's going to be the purchasing manager that is going to be charged with disposing of the property through a competitive procurement process. So having that type of clear guidance to help steward that process along is going to be extremely beneficial. I have one more point, but I'll hold if Alderman Moran wants to.
No, please make your point, because I'm disagreeing with them after you speak.
Okay. So then the second part is there's some language that talks about if there is an exceptional burden on the property, but it really doesn't talk about what exceptional burden is. It starts to talk about environmental contamination, but it doesn't talk about some of the other technical nuances that you need to think about when you're thinking about land development and the disposition of that land development, and ultimately what you're trying to achieve in your community goals. So I think that's another element that when you're developing some additional language, we might want to talk about how we can further clarify some of that language as well, so as we're implementing, we can actually carry forward what you're looking to do. Thank you.
Okay, before you go, Director Cummings, please. You bring up some points there, but to us on the committee, you're diving into deep end or another pool, you know, because this thing, admittedly, it's not ready for prime time. We're not going to vote on it tonight. It's going to remain back on the table. But when it comes back to us, when can we get some education in certain things to meet some of the concerns that the city has? Because the other thing that I see is this window, which is closing at this as we speak. This is November meeting. This means only one more meeting, and then it disappears if it still remains on the table. And I don't think Alderman Moran's coming back, so.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
So it has very short life. But I think maybe some of us on the committee would like, you bring up your concerns. We too share them. Got to have to maybe educate us a little bit on it. You know, because I don't think we're that deep into the code.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay, thank you. All right, Alderman Moran.
Right, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cummings is correct. One, the aspect of exemptions, I think I asked for that because thinking of Mohawk Tannery. What that means is what I'm hearing from you is more detailed of the circumstances of environment aspect, maybe no bids on the RFP at all. That might be exceptional, but certainly someone we can work with to define it and make it make more sense. Because I also wanted there to be a way that if there was a problem, the mayor could step in and waive the policy.
Understood, yeah, and so I think that's the kind of direction we're looking for. I'll give you an example. Sometimes we have contributory value, and so that means that the piece of land, the utility of that land is not ideal, but with it combined with another piece of land, it could be a better product. But we're only talking about a very, small sliver, if you will, sometimes. Or maybe it could be even larger. It depends on the land itself. So, and how you envision that, what we control is just that piece of land versus the other land area around it. What your goals are, it would be good if we knew that so we could work accordingly towards them.
Yeah.
But if it's just in isolation, I could see this potentially being a problem.
Can I follow up?
Yes, Alderman Moran.
Thank you. And I can continue to meet with Director Sullivan. I'm sure he's representing the city side, right? And then if there's any further input here as well. But,
Actually, if I could, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I haven't been involved with this, but I would welcome.
did
the
I said
opportunity.
Director Cummings or Sullivan?
You said Sullivan.
Oh,
But I would
you
welcome
mean-
the opportunity to be involved in it as well.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also, this is the committee, it's got to go back on the table, and you've got to come back with a ready for prime time.
Yes, but
Correct?
I think the point is to discuss what's ready for prime time here, so we don't have to keep going through it. Regardless, the next board, I had 2 aldermen say they would bring it forth again, but I think the conversation should continue here in public eye to say, you know, 1, I made a mistake, 2, of the things that I didn't think were a mistake, what do you guys want changed? And you just ask the questions, and we're working on them right now, and I think that's great.
Okay. I have Alderman Clee, then Alderman Dowd.
Thank you. And this is probably for Alderman Moran. When you were speaking, it doesn't say here, it just says here about city-owned real property, but you made some kind of comment about deeded property. My concern about deeded property, and perhaps someone could say that that goes out an auction, if I'm not mistaken. And so it doesn't, we don't do an RFP for that. It has to do an auction type thing, is that correct? No, we can just assume the property and,
You have actually, Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director, there are other methods of disposition that can be undertaken. You may recall that the West Howell Street property was recently brought to the board as part of a separate piece of legislation to basically decide for you decided to choose an alternative disposition method. So you do have other options when the public interest is determined to be served by using another method.
may I follow up then?
Follow up?
Okay. Thank you. So I guess my concern would be, well, I don't have a problem with this legislation, that's not my issue. The problem that I have is that if we did auction or we did do another method where we disposed of it, if once they got that property, it now becomes a private property, and if they were to develop it, that's my only concern about deeded properties.
Right. That's a good point.
So I'm just making that point, just so that we're thinking about it, because I don't want to have to say that we can only sell deeded properties if they're going to follow this rule. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, just real quick, having been a licensed realtor before, are we checking with state and federal real estate laws to make sure we don't run afoul of either one of those when we're proposing this legislation?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, this means it's open for a motion. Alderman Clee.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to table 025-072.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I'm sure you're going to be working on this forthwith.
You know it.
You're barking against the calendar. Best wishes.
Yes, Godspeed, more like it.
More like it, absolutely. Okay. We also have something on the table, Deerwood Drive, but we're not going to remove that. So we're into general discussion. Seeing nothing from anybody?
Director Cummings wanted to do.
Oh,
something
yes.
during the-
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Alderman Dowd. I put on the screen, I brought it up earlier in the meeting, and I minimized it. Can you do the next one? You should see one other one.
Oh, on that page there?
Yeah.
This one here?
There you go. Ordinance 220118. So again, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. I'm up here this evening to talk a little bit about this idea or concept of the Joint Committee on Infrastructure and Library Trustees. Now, just to orientate everyone, the library has done a yeoman's job in bringing forward a building project. It's my understanding that they've really centered along what I refer to as option 2. I believe you've heard a briefing on this. You were presented a communication, and ultimately the full Board of Aldermen adopted a recommendation to essentially create a joint committee on infrastructure and library trustees. And what we did back in 2022 was we amended our ordinance, and if you scroll down, you'll see we actually created the various bodies If you want to keep scrolling to the next page, you'll see we created some standing committees. What I'm going to suggest is we update our ordinance, and if it's the desire of this body, we would file some legislation to create that joint committee as a standing committee, very similar to what we did back in 2022. And we get in good stead, so then we can start taking action. We have a couple contracts that we know are going to be needed to be pursued. There's already been authorization, a bond authorization to start design. And so we would like to proceed and move forward with getting the contracts approved. What I would need is for the ordinances to be updated to include something like a joint committee type body, so that that entity could actually act as it does in a similar manner as to all the other joint committees. Police Commission, Board of Public Works, Fire Commissioners are mentioned in here. If we do not do that, then the process would deviate a little bit in the sense that then everything would need to go through a finance committee. And so what this ordinance did was it made it clear that it was the joint committees of police commissioners, Board of Public Works, fire commissioners had the authority, similar to what was laid out in state law for the joint special school building committee. And what our standing committee does is follow the joint school building committee. Our charter was silent about a building committee for the library trustees, so this would be just emulating what we've done as past practice, so on and so forth. And so I wanted to tease this detail out because I think it's important to see what the desire is of the infrastructure committee. If you're so inclined, I'll work towards getting some legislation prepared that mirrors something like what we did in 2022. I'll start working with Director Cormick because we need to start scheduling some dates, and I need to work with you all about getting some joint committees scheduled. I'm thinking we probably really won't do that until January, in fairness. I'm hoping the police commissioners, the joint body on infrastructure and police commissioners is winding down at that point. So I'm thinking in the back of my mind, we'll slot you in where the police commissioners used to meet, trying to be mindful of your time and whatnot. But that's sort of what I see happening as terms of next steps and trying to get us organized. And wanted to talk that all through with you now before any actions were taken to see if maybe I've misstepped or if you've had a different thought process, or maybe I'm going in a different direction or the wrong direction. Thank you.
Do have a question from Alderman Dow.
Yeah, I thought when Attorney Leonard came up with this legislation that it included any division's new building. If it's not, and it's this which is calling out every single division individually, it probably should go back and be generalized so we don't have to do this every time. It should say that any division wanting to build a building will have a joint infrastructure with their whatever group and infrastructure. And you know, and I do agree, you know, should wait till January because, you know, you'll get 1 foot in the hole and so the hole will get buried. So, you know, rather than every time we come up with a building, we change the ordinance, it should be anytime any division wants to build a building, that we have this joint committee.
I understand that the language doesn't say that at this time. I'm happy to look into that.
Why don't you talk with Attorney Leonard and see if we can generalize it so that we can save Dory's typewriter.
Understood.
Alderman Clayton.
Thank you. I understand what my colleague just said, but I think because this does affect the charter, what's it, 5-90, if I'm reading this correct here, that where things have to go through finance, I think it's best for us to, just my opinion, and I'm only one vote here, I think it's best for us to be very specific so it doesn't suddenly get out of control. We can amend this as many times as we want, or future boards can amend this anytime we want. I just think it's best rather than just put a generalized statement in, just to protect the provision of the Finance Committee, which is the only committee really in the charter. just, again, my opinion.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, the whole purpose of this type of legislation, paralleling the Joint Special School Building Committee, is so that none of the expenditures from these buildings has to go back to the Finance Committee. That would be a two-step process that would slow things down to a snail's level. So, and I don't see why it doesn't say every division, that wants to build a building of capital infrastructure, that it can't be just handled in one statement without listing every time there's a new building and a division. We don't need to keep modifying this. We can make it general. I would get the opinion of Attorney Leonard.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, you got more homework to do.
So, and everyone's kind of understanding what's on the horizon and relatively good with that?
Right, because the committee, we still stand as part of this. It's just really cleaning up some of the, putting all the toys in the right cupboard, so, yeah.
All right, well, thank you much.
Okay. Anything else on general discussion? Okay, seeing none, public comment? And remarks from Alderman. Alderman Thibodeau.
Tebow.
Tebow.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Tebow.
Chair. I just wanted to remind everybody, Veterans Day Parade tomorrow kicks off 11/11 at Holman Stadium.
Dress warm.
Yes,
Dress warm.
Oh, yeah.
it's gonna be like
Yeah.
34 degrees, yes.
Yeah.
Fast.
Is it the 11th hour or the
Yeah.
11th minute? Yeah.
11.
On the 11th day, yeah.
11:11 at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, okay. Well, anything else? Let's see. No other comments? All right. Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 7:52 PM. Thank you, everybody.